It is wonderful to be back in Mexico, but not so wonderful to follow Jeff Ramsey, because I am not as tall as Jeff Ramsey. I am not as thin as Jeff Ramsey. I am not as good looking as Jeff Ramsey, and I don't know Spanish as well as Jeff Ramsey. But that's okay, because I have a very serious message for you today. Message is about how to build brands online. And the seriousness is this. Everybody in this room is very excited. You're all on the internet, all on interactive media, all on mobile devices all the time. You know this industry is growing. You know that the future is very bright. But I want to tell you that there are some very important things all of us have to do. Some very, very hard work we all must undertake, or else it won't be as exciting or as interesting as we think. Now, how do I know this? IAB US is approaching its 15th anniversary. Today we have more than 400 members. Our members represent 86% of the interactive advertising spending that currently takes place in the United States. We have as our members, as does IAB Mexico, many of the largest interactive digital native companies, Google, Yahoo, Microsoft. We have all the major media companies in the US, their interactive divisions, from New York Times to NBC to Disney to Condé Nast. We have many of the greatest digital content brands, WebMD and Health. We have many of the greatest platform specialists, Facebook in social media, JumpTap in mobile, AdMob in mobile. So we see a lot. We see a lot of things going on. We're devoted to growth. We work with all these companies to help the interactive industry grow, and we specialize in the United States on three strategic platforms. We call them engagement, which is really about telling the growth story to our marketplace. Accountability, which is proving the effectiveness of this medium relative to all other media. And operational effectiveness. We specialize in taking complexity and cost out of the supply chain. So the story I'm going to tell you is a story about what we're seeing from these 400 members. And through these 400 members, what we are seeing from marketers and from agencies. And while the picture is good, it's not great. And it really does point to an enormous amount of work, as I said, that needs to be done. Now, Jeff mentioned the Booz Allen study. This was actually done by Booz Allen, my former firm, for the ANA, the Association of National Advertisers. That's the US CMO Association. The 4As, which is the Agency Association, and the IAB. And 3 years ago, they told us this. One is that massive audience fragmentation is the rule in interactive spaces. Second, they saw boundaries blurring between media and among various kinds of media, and even between marketers' agencies in media as the interactive revolution continued. Third, they saw from clients an intensifying focus on measurement, more than we'd ever seen in the era of television, newspapers, and magazines. They also said, very, very importantly, that marketers, more than anything else on earth, wanted consumer insights, actionable consumer insights. And they said that consumers, marketers, had more choices than ever before. Now that was 3 years ago, right at a very important inflection point in the business. What we've seen during the past 3 years is that all of this came true. And we're now at another inflection point, at another turning point in the history of the interactive industry. I'm using US numbers. I don't have the access to the Mexican numbers that Jeff had. But I think what you're seeing in the US, what we've seen over the past number of years, is a harbinger of what we're going to see in most other markets, including Mexico. One is today, about 3/4 of US adults are online. And by far the majority of them have always-on broadband in the home. Why is this important? It's important because always-on broadband equates to much more prodigious use of online video. I like showing, I'll have a lot of dense charts in this presentation. I apologize for that, but there's some good information in this. I like this chart. I like showing video usage through streams served because it is very, very important contrast to traditional television. Because by definition, online, in interactive media, virtually every video that's viewed is viewed by request. In the old days of television, we used to think of it as a white noise medium, a lean-back medium, something that people turned on just to have some noise in the home. We know from online, though, that people want to consume video. We also know that people want to connect. They want to socially connect. And we do it incessantly. We do it all the time. In fact, it's almost as if a new habit has been created called social media. It's nothing unusual. We connect in our real physical lives all the time. The fact that we do it with such voraciousness in the online world is quite profound. Jeff mentioned 500 million, that Facebook recently announced its 500 millionth user worldwide. But the growth is something that we also should look at. And we also know that increasingly in the US and around the world, people are consuming the internet on the go, mobilely. I've seen a number of iPads out there. This is just the beginning of the next wave in mobile, where mobile is not just small screens, a little bit difficult, fun to use, but a little bit difficult, but screens that allow us to get video everywhere, anywhere, rich media anywhere, everywhere. It breaks down competitive boundaries among media that have existed for decades and decades, where magazines were separate from newspapers, where newspapers were separate from television, where television was separate from the internet. The new generation of mobile devices means all these things blend together, and the competition among media will become more Darwinian than ever before. So, what does this all mean? Why do I say that we're at another turning point in the history of the industry? And why do I say that we all have an enormous amount of work that we need to do if we're to make the interactive revolution come true? Well, first of all, I think we actually are facing a consumer, from a marketer standpoint, a consumer pursuit crisis. All of you in the industry have seen statistics like this that show that the share of interactive advertising spending is much, much lower than the internet's or interactive media's share of consumer time spent on the medium. As this one shows, this was a Bain, Forrester, Ad Age, Morgan Stanley roll-up that Bain did for us. Less than 10% of advertiser spending was on the internet, but more than 30% of consumer time spent is on interactive media. Too frequently, this is called the fair share argument. People, especially in the interactive media business, go to agencies and go to clients and say, we should be able to get our fair share. It's a terrible argument. It's a terrible thing to say, because if I'm a marketer and it's my money, the only thing that's fair is what I say. But I'll tell you why this is dangerous. It means that consumers are going places that marketers are unable to follow them to. It means that marketers can't pursue their audiences where their audiences want to be, and that is a crisis. Second, despite that crisis, despite the fact that marketers need to be able to follow their audiences and cannot do that, our industry, and when I say our industry, I mean primarily publishers and agencies, our industry focuses almost all of its time on driving costs down, not on driving growth up, not on helping marketers with this problem. The overwhelming bulk of activity in our industry to date has really been about how do we drive the cost of banner ads down. very little energy is being spent. For all the talk about mobility and social media, the fact is that marketers around the world still spend the bulk of their marketing money on formatted advertising. And their advisors in this process, the agencies and the publishers, are spending far too much time dealing with cost issues rather than helping marketers follow their audiences. Third problem that we see is that agencies and publishers are not driving brand growth. In fact, they're fostering brand agnosticism. There really is a measurement problem in this industry, and the problem begins with what publishers are selling and what agencies are selling to marketers. Bain did a study for us this year, which I'll do much more on in a couple moments. And in this survey of 700 marketers, they asked, what are the metrics that are being brought to you, and what are the metrics you prefer? The measurements that marketers prefer are actually traditional measurements relating to brand awareness, purchase intent, likability, and likelihood to recommend. But, what do we sell them? We sell them direct response statistics. And that leads to the conclusion that's hard to escape, that we have invented this medium without thinking about it. We have invented this medium to be a direct response medium, not a brand advertising medium. What this dense slide says is that brand marketers overwhelmingly value interactive media for direct response goals. They do not value it relative to other media for brand building goals. I want to tell you something really important. I want to give you what I hope is a simple definition of what a brand is, because this is very, very important. In fact, I'll even ask it as a question. Does anybody out there have a definition of what a brand is? Would you like to try it out? Anybody? Come on, somebody has to have courage. Define the word brand for me. Shout it out. What was that? A consumer's feeling about a product or service. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah? What's the definition of a brand? Something, a promise to improve your life. Okay. A target to improve your life. Very frequent answer that I get when I ask is a brand is a promise. Somewhat similar to that. Other people today, very popular definition of brand is a brand is what they say about you when you're not in the room. So I say, and I apologize, I say that's all bullshit. That's meaningless. That's irrelevant. How many marketers are in the room? How many? Great. Can you use any of those definitions of brand in your business? No, there's nothing actionable about that. Brand has only one definition that's worthwhile. Only one. And I'll define it for you now. You should write this down. It's not on a slide. I'm verbalizing it. A brand is the collection of assets and capabilities that allow one company to charge and to realize premium prices versus like competitors through time. That's it. In other words, I sell soap, you sell soap, I can get 10 cents a soap bar more than you could get. I was able to do that 5 years ago. I can do that today. I can do that 5 years from now. Why? The answer to that question, and there are many, many, many components to that answer, the answer to that question is the definition of a brand. The only definition of brand that really makes sense to marketers is enhanced, enduring, premium price realization versus competitors. And in our emphasis on direct response in this industry, we have not only minimized brand value and brand equity and brand growth, we're actually destroying those values. That is why we're at a turning point. The turning point now is over the next couple of years, will interactive media, the internet and other media based on IP, Internet Protocol, and based on client-server architecture, will we be just a direct response medium? Direct response has a lot going for it. There's a lot of money that flows into that. But will we be only a direct response medium, or will we be a brand development medium? That is what the next several years will show. What should we do about it? How do we answer this question? How do we respond? Well, as I mentioned, IAB went to Bain & Company, the global management consulting firm, and asked for some guidance. And the result was this study based on feedback from 700 brand marketers called Building Brands Online. And Bain came back with identification of 5 or 6 challenges, problems, and many responses. But I'm going to focus on just a couple of those responses to those problems. Problem number 1, Bain said, ad formats and creative are not innovating with the medium. Somebody asked Jeff a question before over there. Will formats change? Jeff punted the answer to me. So I'll give you the answer. Yes, absolutely. They have to. As I told you, we invented this medium to be a direct response medium. And as a result, things like page design are terrible. Small formats, constantly refreshed, are only good for direct marketers. They're not good for brand marketers. As a result, direct response advertising is flooding the internet. In the US, about 90 billion pieces of direct mail were mailed last year. DoubleClick alone delivers 90 billion impressions every 10 days. According to ComScore, there's about 40 times more direct response advertising online than there is brand advertising. I'm extrapolating from figures, and I'm also making a leap in an assumption here that most interactive display advertising these days is sold either directly on a cost per click or cost per action basis, or indirectly, in which clicks and responses are contractually used to optimize the campaign. And if you accept that leap of faith, there is about 40 to 50 to 60 times more direct response advertising online. Why is that relevant? It's relevant because when the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer of BMW, one of the highest valued brands in the world, goes online, there's a 40, 50, 60% chance, better chance, that he will see a paymybills.com ad than an ad for his chief competitor, Lexus. And when he sees that paymybills.com ad, he says, I'm never going to advertise BMW there. So our first problem here is that our formats and our creative are really, they've been optimized for direct response, and we have to improve them. One of the solutions that Bain recommended is publishers actually need to engage in more custom execution, showcasing the emotional potential of online. The publishers ought to start competing with agencies if the agencies aren't doing the right thing, and really showcasing great creative. I would take this a step further, and I would say that the creative crisis in interactive is probably the easiest to overcome and the most important to overcome. That agencies, publishers, and marketers working together ought to bring back the great tradition of creativity that we saw in the creative revolution in the 1960s, in the second creative revolution in the 1980s. We need to bring that online. That's going to happen through custom execution, and that's going to happen just through better creativity. Remember, keep saying this over and over again. We invented this medium to be a direct response medium. Most of the agencies that you associate with interactive are actually direct response agencies. Digitas began life as an agency called Bronner Schlossberg, a direct response agency in Connecticut. Modem Media began life as Poppy Tyson, a direct response agency. We need to bring the values of creativity into our field. The agencies are going to be responsible for this, and it will be the creative agencies that will make or break the growth of brands online. Second problem that Bain made us aware of. We're awash in undifferentiated, low-cost inventory. Look, we all know prices are going down. There's far more supply than there is demand, and there always will be more supply of interactive advertising inventory than there is demand. So what do we do about it? Well, Bain, and don't worry, I'll translate this slide, make it easy for you. Bain said media companies, publishers, need to develop and deliver what they called a triple play service model. What this means fundamentally is we must understand that marketers want three different things from their advertising generally and from their interactive advertising specifically. Three very, very different things. One is brand engagement. They want the intimacy, they want the feeling, the emotion, the power that comes from a consumer connection to a brand. Second is they want classic reach and frequency, brand reach, and of just getting those GRPs, those gross rating points out there to build awareness. And the third, segments of them want response. But where we run into trouble and where we have run into trouble historically in this industry is by confusing those things. So for example, and every publisher, how many publishers are in the audience? Okay, well you've all done this, so you all know. You've all sold direct response campaigns, campaigns where you get paid just on the number of clicks you get. Well, by doing that, you're actually giving away brand reach and brand awareness for free. Very perverse disincentive there. By the same token, historically, advertisers have confused brand reach, what's called tonnage, with brand engagement. But the great godfathers of the creative revolution understood that truly creative advertising that creates bonds and affinities between consumers and brands has greater value than just tonnage. We need to recognize that online. But from a media company perspective, and I'm speaking to the publishers in the room now, you have to develop different service models. Because for marketers especially, they don't want to spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, or a lot of money on buying reach or buying direct response. You can automate most of that. The DSP evolution that's taking place around the world, including in Mexico, that's really about automating the media planning and buying processes. That's for brand reach and that's for direct response. It has almost nothing to do with brand engagement. Brand engagement will be high touch, it will be high valued, and it should cost more. Problem number 3, I mentioned this before. There are metrics everywhere. Everybody in this room has a different form of measurement that you want to apply to advertising. But as the previous chart, or the earlier chart showed, these are not the metrics that marketers are looking for. We need much more as a solution, much more standardization around how metrics are applied in the interactive advertising supply chain. IAB in the US is engaged in what we call a measurement standardization initiative, where we actually hope to get consistency and agreement among marketers, agencies, and publishers around what are the metrics that matter for different forms of online advertising in different circumstances. This will be very important in lowering transaction costs and making it easier for marketers to understand what is the ROI of the campaigns that they're getting. The next challenge. This is also directed at publishers in the room, but it also applies to agencies, I'm sorry to say. But publishers in particular really don't have the ideas and the strategic expertise that marketers need to bring them through this process. When we surveyed marketers and asked them to rate media sales teams, what we discovered was that online publishers ranked lowest of all the media sales teams around in terms of their skills and their ability to serve marketers. Too many times we have hired transactional players, people who just want to kind of sell banners, or what we in the US have always caricatured as selling spots and dots. But what's needed and what marketers need more than anything else, and Jeff actually referred to this in his presentation, is they need more consultative selling. There are too many options in interactive media. There are too many wonderful things that are possible. There are too many opportunities to drive your brand growth. And that's very confusing to a marketing department that for 60 or 70 years has done nothing but television and magazine advertising. So we need to bring into this industry more skilled salespeople, more consultative salespeople, and we need to train them to be able to serve marketers better. The next challenge that Bain identified, marketers really want, this was another question that was asked before, marketers universally say they want cross-platform campaigns, but we tend to provide them, and this is very true of the agencies as well as the publishers, we tend to provide them siloed, platform-specific silos. The agencies have been the worst culprits here because they've developed under the holding company structure specialist agencies, each with their own P&L, each devoted to driving their own growth in whatever their specialty is, whether it's mobile or social or online display or television or print. And because of the way they're compensated inside the agency, they don't collaborate. The ability, marketers have been frustrated beyond all belief, and they speak very publicly about this. In fact, Becky Sager, the chief marketing officer of Charles Schwab, said at the ANA annual conference on stage 2 years ago, agencies, especially media agencies, ought to be disintermediated because they are not providing value. And that's the value marketers want. They want this integrative value. Publishers, too, have not been stepping up to the plate. They still, too frequently, have separate sales teams for different divisions. They compensate the sales teams based on whether they've grown just the magazine or just the video product. They haven't well organized around integration. So clearly, the answer to this, the solution is more integration in the agencies and in media sales forces. We have seen a great deal of movement among publishers in fostering this type of integration. We have seen less movement among the agencies. And as a result, we see more marketers going directly to the publishers to do deals, especially the large multi-platform publishers, because they simply believe that their media agencies are getting in the way. Now, I think disintermediation is fine. I represent publishers. I want them to make more money. But I also think that it would be a hell of a lot better for everybody involved in the ecosystem if the agencies and the publishers were able to coordinate multi-platform campaigns better on behalf of their marketing partners. So just to go over the 5 proposals again, just to give you this reminder, these are the problems. Ad formats and creativity need to innovate. The answer, just more creativity and more custom execution for marketers, high-value execution. Problem 2, too much undifferentiated low-cost inventory. The solution, you need 3 service models, and you need to be able to charge high value for really top services. And remember, those services include things like customer insights and consumer insights. They include creative execution. They include deep analytics. They include consultative selling. That's the future of the publishing business. Problem 3, too many metrics, but not the ones that marketers need. The answer to that is we need more standardized metrics that really compare and can value brand campaigns. And this is something that IAB is working on and can work on and can help resolve. Problem 4, media companies need better sales teams. The answer to that is we got to train better sales teams. And finally, marketers want cross-platform campaigns. The solution, we need to do better integration of the agencies, better integration of the publishers, frankly needs to be better integration of the marketers, and better collaboration across the value chain. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for having me back at IAB Connecta. I want to thank Bianca and the team, and I want to thank you for coming to IAB Connecta. Apparently, we have some time for questions, so...
One question.
One question. We have time for one question. I can't see over there. Anything? Anybody have a good joke? Sorry, Pablo! How are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm very well, thank
Great.
you.
I'm going to be the one asking you the question.
Okay,
So let me
okay.
move into the podium. Thank you, Randall, for your conference. As always, it's very clarifying and inspiring for us. The question we would like to ask is, okay, you have given us an action plan, and it's a very actionable plan for advertisers and for the industry. But how do we, as an industry, move forward from the positioning that we are a direct response medium and that we are somehow cheaper than medium?
Well, there are a number of things that need to be done. One is premium publishers need to limit the amount of inventory they spew out into the world. I mean, Economics 101 says there's a direct relationship between supply and demand. If you put out too much supply out there, you're going to cheapen your pricing. Number two, again, I'm speaking specifically for premium publishers and display advertising. Number two, you better have good yield management. If you don't understand why your back page is less valuable than your front page, and if you don't know how to value that inventory appropriately when you sell it and when you deliver it, you will cheapen yourself. And number three is you have to bring services into your mix. I think the value of formatted advertising will continue to go down in the aggregate because of the supply-demand problem. So if you're, as a publisher, if you've banked your growth on just the sale of formatted inventory, that's not enough. You need to bring in profitable services into your revenue mix. So I would say those are some very action-oriented things that publishers ought to be undertaking.
Thank you very much, Randall.